Lena worked overnight Saturday until 2 a.m., but the monthly Sunday ritual with her grandfather was non-negotiable. She dozed as late as possible, showered and dressed on this perfect May morning, and departed her house by 10:15 a.m. Parking in the driveway at the condo, she noticed signs that the lawn needed tending. There were spring dandelions and a few bare spots along the grass. She switched off the ignition, made a mental note to call the landscaper, and entered through the iron swinging gate. Carmen left the condo that morning, picked up by Leon's 17-year-old son Tyrell. That was her monthly ritual, time with her folks. They took her to church and Sunday supper. Lena and Poppy would pick her up again from Leon's at 4 o'clock that afternoon. Lena used her key to open the storm door and let herself into the foyer. Poppy came out of the hallway bathroom, smelling of fresh hand soap. They met near the dining room, still tastefully decorated, if a bit dated, according to Beatrice's design style. Ready? He would be, of course. He was affixing his watch as he walked toward the door. His sneakers were perfectly tied, and he wore aftershave. All righty, he asserted. He had a snap in his step, a sense of purpose on that Sunday morning. He was wearing jeans, cushy sneakers in blue and white, a light cardigan over a white button-up shirt. He wore a gold watch and his wedding ring, and somewhere under the shirt, a simple chain with a Star of David. Poppy was no slouch. "Whoa," Lena exclaimed as they stepped toward the front door. Poppy spun in a circle, tapping his feet, showing off in delight. This, too, was part of their once-a-month ritual. Pretty sharp there, Poppy. He hadn't felt the need to wear a suit in a decade, but such care, nonetheless, was still taken with his appearance. Grooming had been such an important part of his life, his business, his reputation. When he was in his 20s, he dressed to impress the bosses. In his 30s and 40s, when he attended important business meetings. Even now, his sneakers were immaculate. His shirt was pressed from the cleaners. Even his jeans sported a sharp front crease, courtesy of Carmen's trusty iron. His gray and white hair was slicked back with a slight trace of hair oil. The same brand he'd used since the 50s. His dark eyes twinkled mischievously. He loved to spend time with his girls. He kissed Lena upon her forehead as she locked the door behind them. They walked together toward her car. She opened the passenger door for her elderly grandfather and, per his wishes, let Poppy seat himself. He did so quietly. No sighs or grunts to indicate the condition of his bones, his hips, his knees, tendons. He sat and ran his hands down the length of his thighs, smoothing out his jeans. He fastened his seatbelt before she made her way into the driver's seat, and off they went. He liked to listen to the radio while they drove, so she searched for the light jazz and standard station that he preferred. His fingers lightly drummed upon his stomach. His eyeglasses automatically tinted darker in the sunshine. Sarah Vaughan was soon singing, and Lena pulled away from the curb. Her car was tidy with tweed seats. Lena wore a long brown skirt, sandals, and a Western-style denim top with mother-of-pearl buttons. "How has the weekend been?" she inquired, flipping the visor. "Very good. We were at the Eastern Market yesterday. Remind me to give you some of the spinach. Very fresh. Very good this week." "So, did you see the kid today when he picked up Carm?" Poppy made a light clucking sound with his tongue. "I did, yes. He was wearing the dungarees with the gatkis sticking right out. That one. Trouble." They only knew a little of Tyrell's situation. He was arrested 6 months ago. Something to do with stolen property found in his possession. He swore that it belonged to a friend. He didn't know it was stolen. Carmen wouldn't tell them much. She didn't feel it was her place to share. But the consensus among the Ashners was that Leon and Jacqueline's 2 children, Tasha, who was 19, and Tyrell, both headed for misfortune. Shame, because Leon and Jacqueline were such quality people. Getting Tasha to babysit Viva was Jacqueline's idea. She was desperate to keep her daughter out of trouble after she failed to graduate the previous summer due to poor grades and several detentions during her final semester. Tasha worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken for about 2 months the past winter, but quit when her then boyfriend told her to. Leon and Jacqueline, at their wits' end with worry, reached out to Carmen first about helping Tasha find employment. Tyrell was a different story. Nobody knew quite what to do with the kid. He was now on the verge of dropping out of school. He thinks it's all a barrel of chimpanzees, Poppy muttered, looking out the window. Lena turned down the radio. What's that? The life of a gangster. This was the first and only time her grandfather uttered that word in Lena's presence. She changed the subject. When is your next doctor's visit? Poppy had a checkup 3 weeks before. Since that appointment, Lena knew that his doctor wrote Poppy a new prescription, but he wouldn't tell her what it was for. He'd become more and more secretive and guarded about his medical health with her. Doctors, always with the little prescription paper, who knows? There was this clear line that she couldn't cross. She used to be trusted with the small aches and pains, the worries and exams. She supposed it must be hard turning over the decisions to someone so much younger, even if they are a registered nurse and family. But he answered her. On the 15th, Rushmore will take me. Rushmore was his driver, a longtime associate and most trusted friend. They drove up Evergreen and arrived at the breadbasket 20 minutes later. There were a few patrons in queue ahead of Poppy and Lena, but they didn't have to wait long. The restaurant was bustling with cheer and conversation, fragrant with the scent of warm and salty foods, onions, garlic, corned beef, briny and inviting, rye, mustard, dill, sweet latkes and blintzes, salamis and sharp cheese, soothing chicken broth, and everywhere the aroma of similar colognes, a smell of amber and sandalwood, nostalgic and familiar. Almost everyone in the restaurant was over the age of 60. The hostess whizzed over to greet the duo as she always did, with a smile and a hug for each. She'd worked here forever, all of 4.5 feet tall, tiny and wiry, with black hair slicked into an olive oil bun and Russian red lipstick. A smear of ruby appeared across her top teeth as she flashed a smile and welcomed her patrons. For Poppy, the hostess was a friendly face and a smile that assured the old man of his solid place in this world. For Lena, she was a relic, a reminder of all the things that seemed to never, ever change. They were escorted to a booth on the left side behind the kitchen. A basket of fresh rye bread and both pickles, sours and half-sours, was brought round. They always split a meal when they came here. Lena deferred to her grandfather to select the entree, and they each ordered a cup of matzo ball soup. Today, Poppy chose the corned beef salad, a mammoth bowl of chopped iceberg lettuce with corned beef and julienne Swiss. He requested a side of Russian dressing for his half of the salad, while she chose ranch. The salad, the soup, the bread, the pickles, it all made for an exquisite lunch. The waiter was a young man, polite if a bit twitchy. He was tall, and his yellow shirt kept billowing out around his clinched-in brown leather belt. Other diners, seated to their left and right, would look over their way and give Poppy a nod or a subtle smile, and then they would glance away or down, as if they thought, ah, him. Poppy didn't seem to notice. Lena often did. Lena reminded Poppy that Irene was flying in for Viva's birthday. Do you want to do dinner at your place? She inquired, knowing that not to ask would be a significant insult. Oh, yes, he insisted, between his almost delicate slurps of soup. I will barbecue, and we will have gifts for the Mädel. They spent an hour at lunch. They spoke about Eva and the new accountant Poppy hired to help her. They bantered about the weather and the new Tigers pitcher. They planned for next month's birthday celebration, and they reminisced. After, as they stood by the cash register and Poppy paid the bill with cash, he bought a chocolate halva and they split it as they walked together to her car. This was their tradition. This was uniquely theirs, and lunch was only the beginning of their once-a-month regular Sunday outing together. There was an independent bookstore next to the breadbasket. Lena always enjoyed goggling into their windows. Rare books, coffee table tomes on art and design, elaborate origami, woven crafts. It was the kind of place that an eccentric elderly lady might spend her afternoon. A lady who wore tatty old sweaters and purple socks, perhaps. Lena never found the opportunity to read those days, but she was drawn, nonetheless, to the tableau the book beat portrayed, and she would always think, someday I'll hang out in that place. She usually parked by the bookstore to have the excuse of looking into the windows, although she never quite made her way within. The bookstore was also close enough to the restaurant that Poppy wouldn't tire from walking. Not that he minded. He'd have her park a block away, and he'd say, "So we get tomorrow's exercise today." Today she paused at the window when she saw the display included a framed print of the Nut Gatherers. Like many Detroiters, she felt a sense of ownership about one of the city's most famed pieces of art. "Where to now?" asked Lena, cringing, knowing what options were on the table. "Northgate," he retorted succinctly. Northgate Mall was a peculiar preference of her grandfather's. That particular mall had become rather dodgy in recent years, a degraded reminder of past retail splendor, and yet Poppy apparently didn't realize that it wasn't 1970 anymore. Once, while she and Poppy were in the food court eating pretzels, two black girls got into a nasty fight. One girl started ripping the weave right from the other girl's head. But Poppy had a strange fondness for the place, especially the folks over at Hudson's. This was where he bought all his personal grooming items and most of his clothing the past 2 decades. He couldn't understand that Northgate was becoming a violent place that white folks chose to avoid. She glanced down at his fine Rolex and sighed. As she backed the Volvo out, Poppy announced, "I hope that Carmen is enjoying herself over to Leon's, but I really hope she's not in a mood when she comes home tonight. She's been slipping lately. She's getting old." What could Lena respond to this? "Poppy, Carmen is almost 15 years younger than you. I haven't seen any slowness or forgetfulness at all." "Well, I know you don't see it, but she's slipping. And maybe her thinking isn't right anymore. Yesterday she forgot all about turning the oven cleaner on, and then stomped all over the house waiting to put a pot pie in there for lunch." "Why didn't she just use the toaster oven?" "See?" "Oh, I don't think it means that she's senile, but Poppy, what else has a woman to do these days besides hang around the house? Ever since she stopped working outside the home, she stopped having interests. I'm glad she's spending time with her nephew and his family. She needs hobbies, activities, to keep her mind engaged. I'm sure the only thing wrong with her is a little cabin fever." "So you think I'm the senile one dreaming this up?" "Not at all. Still, you get out most days. You play handball, or run errands, or come see us girls. Carmen needs friends. She needs to get out. Maybe we should invite her family over the house more often, too." She threw away all the zafe. "I'm sorry?" They were at the corner of 12 Mile and Catalpa, waiting for the light to turn green. "She threw out the laundry soap." "Why would she throw it away?" "Well, there was still a little bit left inside the bottle." "A little? Maybe she thought there was less than there was. Maybe you thought there was more. Did she replace it?" "Oh, she bought some fancy laundry soap. Some fragrance-free mishigash." Lena chuckled and swiveled down the heat. "Poppy, didn't you complain a couple of weeks ago that the smell of your clothes made you sneeze? It sounds like she was trying to make it easier on you." His smell had been the first thing to go in his twilight years. Nothing smelled the same. Nothing smelled right. Nothing smelled as good as it used to, or it just downright bugged him. It started slowly about 6 or 7 years before, but he'd been noticeably verbose about it this past year. Poor Carmen. Try to help an old man's olfactory sense out and get accused of being senile. Lena stifled a grin. Poppy still, to this day, would not be permitted to be made a fool of. It was unthinkable. The old man was still in charge. And so she drove to Northgate as he requested. Poppy wanted to pick up some new undershirts and an electric razor. They stayed at the mall roughly an hour, chatting with the friendly sales ladies at Hudson's and stopping to get a large frozen Coke on their way out, which they shared like a couple of sweethearts. When they left the mall that afternoon, Lena drove east to the Mach-Palach Cemetery. This was the older Hebrew cemetery on Woodward, outside of Detroit in the suburb of Ferndale. This was where Beatrice, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother, lay in her final repose. Poppy's late wife, Lena's dear grandma. It was also the cemetery that Solomon Ashner was interred, although the son died long before his mother. Lena jumped out of the driver's side and made her way to the passenger door to assist her grandfather. Poppy always insisted on visiting their loved ones on these monthly outings, but it had a terrible effect upon the man. It aged him. He would leave the cemetery more stooped and fatigued than he entered those iron gates, and yet this was how he chose to spend one Sunday every month. Beatrice had been a difficult woman, contrary and peculiar in her ways, but Michael Ashner loved his wife and gave her everything he thought she wanted, including the quartz headstone that carried her name and her Hebrew name. They walked slowly to her grave. Solomon's headstone was near his mother, but not beside it. Saul died in 1976, and Poppy spared no expense or effort when sending his only child into eternity. When Beatrice died 22 years later of emphysema, Poppy trusted professionals to make those decisions. They took turns, Lena and Poppy, each placing a stone or rock upon their family's headstones. Poppy set a knobby brown stone on his son's grave, and Lena laid a slip of shale upon her grandmother's. As the eldest grandchild, she had been very close to Beatrice, whom the girls called Bibi. Lena always knew she was Bibi's favorite. This was something that made her neither proud nor pleased. There were 3 other graves here as well that belonged to the family, although Lena never met 2 of them and barely remembered the third. Her great-grandmother, Judith Landau, who died when she was 3, was laid to rest here. A baby born to Poppy and Beatrice before her father, and her great-uncle Wilhelm Landau, all were laid to rest at Mach-Palach. Wilhelm, Beatrice's brother, was killed in a gangland retaliation shooting on Yom Kippur 1958, shot in his face for robbing a truck full of fur coats so that his mother couldn't give her boy an open casket funeral. Poppy refused to lay a stone on Wilhelm's grave and thought his granddaughter funny in the head when she insisted upon doing so.